else, but now it'll always be on my mind for my whole career.
You know, many years down the line, people are going to look back and say that I should have been.
I want to be better than Mike, honestly. I know it's a lot to go, but I'll write my own story.
Draft night just shattered the NBA. Some teams walked out of the 2026 NBA draft looking like absolute geniuses, while others looked like they needed to be fired immediately. Nobody saw this coming because at pick number 2, Darryn Peterson got a Kobe tattoo on the floor at Barclays Center and told the entire league he's coming for everyone. At pick number 3, Cameron Boozer warned the world they would regret sleeping on him. Meanwhile, Caleb Wilson told the press he'd be greater than Michael Jordan himself. But if you think you heard it all, wait till you hear about what went down in the tunnel between Cameron Boozer and AJ Dybantsa. Okay, so the undisputed king of delusion right now has to be Cameron Boozer. The kid went on ESPN right before the draft and told Kendrick Perkins with a completely straight face that he had no idea why he was not the consensus #1 pick.
But I mean, for me, not being in that conversation, I don't really understand it. And I think, you know, many years down the line, people are going to look back and say that I should have been.
Mind you, this kid's the youngest player in the top 3, but he's out here talking like he already has 3 championship rings. I mean, to be fair, he actually won the Wooden Award and AP Player of the Year after putting up 20 points and 10 boards a game at Duke.
Flips it out with the great read on defense and finishes it with a flush.
Boozer Devi has been the crown jewel for the Blue Devils of that class.
So he has the receipts to back up the talk. And then Skip Bayless, who's never missed an opportunity to be wrong about something, immediately tweeted that he does not love Boozer because he's not that explosively athletic. The guy shot 55% from the field and averaged a double-double as a teenager, but sure, it's not good enough for Skip. Meanwhile, his dad Carlos Boozer was in the crowd, smiling like a proud dad. And his mom Cece completely stole the show in those golden shoes, while the Grizzlies general manager Zach Klayman practically ran to the podium to grab him at number 3. Jay Bilas called him the best pure basketball player in this entire class, which means Memphis got an absolute steal while everyone else was overthinking.
Cameron Boozer is the best pure basketball player in this draft.
But while Boozer was treating this like a Hollywood movie, Darryn Peterson is approaching his career like a dark villain origin story. The guy was so convinced he was going first overall to the Washington Wizards that he literally refused to visit or schedule a single workout with any other franchise in the entire league. But when he inevitably slipped to the Utah Jazz at number 2, he openly warned the media that this exact snub is gonna stay trapped in his head rent-free for his entire professional life. And by the way, Kendrick Perkins had already gone on air and compared him to Kobe Bryant, which is an incredibly stressful comparison to live up to when you already have a massive chip on your shoulder. Peterson then got a Kobe tattoo on his shoulder on draft night and said he wants to wear number 8 just like Kobe. Now he joins a completely terrifying Utah core with Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George. And Jaren Jackson Jr. even tweeted at him to let him know it's time to cook. That brings us to AJ Dybantsa, the actual number 1 pick, who spent his entire draft night trying to defend his own facial expressions. When Washington originally won the lottery, the cameras caught Dybantsa looking like he just found out his car got towed, which forced him to go on social media to explain that he does not actually hate the city of DC. The kid averaged 25 points a game at BYU and is the first college scoring leader to go number 1 since Glenn Robinson back in 1994. So the talent is completely undeniable.
1-21, Dybantsa. Long strides to the other side of the rim. Reverse flip with the right hand. The layup.
John Wall was literally sitting courtside calling him a young Tracy McGrady, which is high praise considering Washington hasn't had a winning season since 2018. Now he joins a supercharged roster with Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and Trae even texted him after the pick to tell him that the city's finally ready for a takeover. But as good as all that sounds, the crazy thing is, the biggest winner of the entire draft night didn't even come from one of those first 3 picks. The Memphis Grizzlies were somewhere in the back, quietly pulling off one of the coldest front office moves in recent memory. And by the time everyone figured out what happened, it was already done. Memphis walked into draft night carrying 3 picks and walked out with a franchise cornerstone, a starting caliber NBA center they never technically drafted, and 5 extra second-round picks. In one single night, while everyone was distracted watching the top 3 drama unfold, Zach Klayman was in the back quietly cooking something nobody saw coming. They got Boozer at 3. We already talked about that. But then they took pick 16 and traded it to Oklahoma City for pick 17 and 2 second-rounders. Then immediately took pick 17 and traded it to Detroit for pick 21 and 3 more second-rounders. So they dropped 5 total spots and collected 5 extra second-round picks in the process. Then they took 3 of those seconds they just manufactured out of thin air and flipped them straight to Detroit for Isaiah Stewart, a proven NBA center who finishes 76% of his shots at the rim and is owed only $30 million over 2 seasons. They literally created an NBA rotation player from players that did not exist 2 hours earlier. Boozer plus Zach Edey plus Isaiah Stewart is now one of the most physically imposing front courts in the entire Western Conference, and Memphis built it in one evening like it was nothing. And by the way, nobody's talking about the Ja Morant situation loudly enough. While all of this is going on, he still hasn't been traded. Memphis is clearly moving on and building around Boozer, which means there's a real chance Cameron Boozer becomes the face of this franchise before Morant even knows what his next chapter is. But while Memphis won the night on paper, the most painful story of this entire draft belongs to a franchise that did not even show up to the arena because they traded their own future away a whole year ago. And on draft night, they sat home and watched another team walk up to the podium to claim the savior they so desperately needed. The New Orleans Pelicans front office deserves a lifetime ban from managing after what they pulled off. Last year, they were a pathetic 26-win team and decided to trade away their unprotected 26th first-round pick, along with pick number 23, which became Asa Newell, just to move up 10 spots to draft Derek Queen. They demanded absolutely 0 lottery protections and asked for 0 sweeteners from the Atlanta Hawks. And here's the shocking part nobody expected. That unprotected pick turned into the number 8 selection in this draft, and Atlanta immediately used it to secure Kingston Flemings. So this means Atlanta walked away with both Asa Newell and Kingston Flemings, while New Orleans gave all of that up for one guy. To make matters worse, if the Pelicans had just kept their assets and tanked those final few weeks of the season, they would have had a 52% chance at landing a top 4 pick like AJ Dybantsa or Cameron Boozer. The only saving grace here is that Derek Queen actually showed insane flashes by recording the first triple-double by a rookie center in NBA history. But he basically has to win multiple championships to ever justify this price tag. Meanwhile, Portland also showed up to draft night with absolutely 0 picks because they traded theirs away 5 years ago and completely forgot to study for the test. But as crazy as it sounds, none of that's as sad as the kid who was sitting alone in the green room. In $4 million worth of jewelry, watching 30 names get called, and not a single one of them was his. Isaiah Evans showed up to the draft wearing a $3 million brooch and a $1 million wallet chain, rocking the most expensive jewelry in draft history according to the New York Post, only to become the saddest story of the draft. Pick 20 went by. Then pick 30, and this poor guy was left sitting completely alone in an empty room because the first round wrapped up without a single call. He had to walk back into the venue the next day and went at pick 33 to Minnesota with a non-guaranteed contract. And here's the part that genuinely stings, because if he had just stayed at Duke one more year, CBS Sports reported he could have made between $3 and $5 million in NIL alone. His entire rookie deal will not even touch that kind of cash, which proves that the old draft pipeline is genuinely broken. Borderline lottery guys like UConn's Braylon Mullins are straight up turning down the draft to stay in school for the cash. And Rick Pitino just handed Tunde Yasufu a $7 million deal at St. John's. Even a massive 7-footer like Henry Vesar walked away from a $4 million NIL package at North Carolina, where he would have been the preseason ACC Player of the Year, only to slide all the way to pick 52. Future prospects will look at Evans in that empty room like a ghost story. And even though Dante DiVincenzo tearing his Achilles opens up minutes for him, 30 teams collectively robbed this kid of millions. So yeah, Evans' night was a total nightmare. But Oklahoma City looked at exactly how they lost, identified a specific problem, and walked into draft night and fixed it. The rest of the league should be genuinely concerned. Oklahoma City just told the rest of the NBA that they are not going away anytime soon. They lost to San Antonio in the Western Conference Finals, and instead of drowning in that, Sam Presti did an honest evaluation on his roster to realize Victor Wembanyama completely beat him physically, while their late-game offense choked because of bad outside shooting. So Presti walked into draft night and fixed both flaws with precision. He snagged Ade Mara at pick 12, a 7'3" Spanish monster out of Michigan with elite defensive fundamentals. And even though Jeremy Woo on ESPN literally stated that there's no real counter for Wemby, Mara has the size and attitude to match him physically. OKC literally drafted the only human capable of sharing a floor with Wemby without getting flustered. Then OKC traded up with Memphis to grab Bennett Sturts at 16, an Iowa guard who's a pure three-point machine, capable of running the second unit and fixing that exact crunch time shooting drought. But Presti runs this franchise like a cold-blooded operation, because he already dumped Aaron Wiggins just to clear out the dead weight. Shea, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren are all getting maxed out, so Presti has to build cheap depths around him, which is the exact blueprint he used for Durant, Westbrook, and Harden back in the day. Analysts say they're positioned to have the deepest collection of talent in the entire league for the next season, and the West is completely blind to it. However, somehow, that's not even the most impressive front office move that draft night, because Philadelphia basically snuck into the back door of the first round and grabbed an absolute lottery talent at pick 22, while 21 other teams were completely asleep at the wheel. ESPN analyst Bobby Marks, who actually used to run the Nets front office, straight up called LeBaron Fillon Jr. the single best pick of the entire night. This kid declared for the draft a whole year ago in 2025, got told by scouts his playmaking was mid and his three-point shot was broken, and instead of crying about it, he went back to Alabama and worked on himself. He dragged his three-point shooting from 31.5% all the way up to 39.9%, while dropping 22 points and 5 assists a game. Fran Fraschilla literally said on live television that Fillon could end up being the absolute best point guard in this entire class, which is wild to hear about a guy who fell all the way to 22.
I think the best of them at this moment.
But here's where things get sneaky. Philadelphia traded Jared McCain to OKC just to get this pick. So if Fillon busts, that trade will haunt him forever. But right now, every front office that passed on him is currently panicking. Now we've talked about a lot so far. Memphis robbed everybody. Oklahoma City's scarier than ever. Philadelphia found their steal. But we have not talked about the most genuinely unhinged thing said by any player the entire draft week. Caleb Wilson got drafted at number 4 by the Chicago Bulls and immediately decided that draft week was not dramatic enough, so he chose pure violence during his introductory press conference. The North Carolina player put up nearly 20 points and 10 boards a game on an absurd 57% shooting. And he did all of that while playing through a fractured hand and a broken thumb that ruined most of his season. ESPN Chicago's already calling him the biggest potential savior since Derrick Rose, and Bleacher Report labeled him as the single highest upside swing in the entire class, even over AJ Dybantsa and Cameron Boozer. But 2 days after getting drafted, this teenager sat in front of the media with a completely straight face and said he expects to win Rookie of the Year and wants to be better than Mike.
Honestly, I want to be better than Mike. Honestly, I know it's a lot to go, but I I'm writing my own story.
Yeah, you heard that right. Saying you want to clear Michael Jordan while sitting in the city that Jordan built is a level of audacity that you just have to respect. So let's just step back and actually take in what this draft gave us. Boozer went on live television before he was drafted and told the world that teams would regret not picking him first. Peterson said the snub will live in his mind for his entire career. Dybantsa had to write a LinkedIn post to explain his own face. Isaiah Evans sat in a green room wearing $4 million worth of jewelry while 30 names got called and his was not one of them. New Orleans spent draft night on their couch watching Atlanta use the pick they gave away. And Caleb Wilson walked into Chicago and told the city that worships Michael Jordan that he's gonna be better than Jordan. One of the guys in the top 4 is gonna be right about everything they said. And one team is gonna spend the next decade wishing they'd just listened when these kids told them exactly who they were planning to become. So drop your ranking in the comments right now. Peterson, Boozer, Dybantsa, Wilson. Who's the best player from this draft in 5 years? And be honest, did the Wizards actually make the right call at number 1? Because 2 of the other guys in that top 3 clearly do not think so. And they made sure everybody heard it.